Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're basically becoming detectives, but we're not trying to solve a crime, we're trying to understand one of our most powerful and honestly most misunderstood emotions, anger. We're going to go way past the surface level stuff, the outbursts and the irritation, to really uncover the deep hidden roots of why we get so angry. So, let's get started.
Have you ever been there? Where some tiny little inconvenience, maybe someone cuts you off in traffic or a comment that was probably harmless just sets you off. And suddenly, you're filled with this level of rage that feels completely out of proportion. It's a really confusing feeling, right? Well, there's a reason for that. And spoiler alert, it is almost never about the small thing that just happened.
And that really brings us to the core idea we're going to unpack today. The anger you actually feel and express, the part that everyone sees, is often just a tiny, tiny fraction of the real story. The real drivers? They're hidden, deep down beneath the surface.
Okay, so let's properly introduce this concept, the anger iceberg. The whole idea here is that anger often acts as what's called a secondary emotion. You can think of it like a protective shield, or maybe a really loud warning siren that's covering up other much more vulnerable feelings.
And here's the thing you've got to understand. Anger feels powerful. It feels active. And because of that, it often feels so much safer to express than the primary emotions it's hiding. It's a defense mechanism, plain and simple. We use it to mask feelings like hurt or fear or shame, emotions that, let's be honest, can make us feel really weak and powerless.
And this is such a great way to see it visually. Up there, above the water, you've got all the things we recognize as anger. Explosive outbursts, constant irritability, frustration, even sarcasm. But look what's below the surface. That's what's actually fueling the anger. Things like deep hurt, intense fear, a feeling of powerlessness, or shame and rejection.
So, if we're going to figure out what's lurking in our own personal iceberg, we have to do a little time travel. The emotional patterns that we carry around as adults, well, they were largely programmed way back in childhood, creating the very foundation for how we react to the world today.
Think of it like this. As kids, our brains are basically like wet cement. Our experiences are busy writing instructions into it. Now, if you grow up in a supportive, safe home, you learn healthy ways to regulate your emotions. But if you grow up in a chaotic or stressful environment, your brain adapts to survive, and those survival adaptations can stick with you for a lifetime.
This right here gets to the heart of it. Hypervigilance is a survival mechanism. Your system basically learns that the world is an unsafe place, so it stays on this constant, exhausting lookout for threats. As an adult, that means even a tiny trigger, something that feels even vaguely threatening, can set off a major survival response, which we often experience as explosive, sudden anger.
And listen, this isn't just some theory. It's really well documented. Research into what's called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, shows a direct link. It's what they call a dose-response relationship. So the more trauma you experienced as a kid, the more likely anger is a go-to response for you now. And what's really interesting is that different kinds of trauma can wire different anger styles. For example, emotional neglect is often linked to a kind of simmering, resentful anger, while physical abuse can be tied to more explosive outbursts.
Now, this is where things get really fascinating, because this connection isn't just in your head, it's in your body. Studies have shown that adversity in childhood can lead to chronically high levels of inflammation in the body. You can see some of the key markers here. What this does is it basically puts your whole system in a state of constant threat detection. Your body physically feels like it's always under attack, which, as you can imagine, dramatically lowers the bar for an angry response.
Okay, let's pick up our next big clue in this investigation. Beyond just trauma, our earliest relationships, especially with our caregivers, create our attachment style. And you can think of this as your personal blueprint for how you connect with other people and, crucially, what triggers your anger inside those relationships.
This chart lays it all out so clearly. You can see the 4 primary styles, and each one has a core fear that drives a really predictable anger reaction. If you're anxious, you fear abandonment, so you escalate to try and get a response. If you're dismissive avoidant, you fear being smothered, so you withdraw and shut down. The fearful avoidant style is tricky. It fears both intimacy and distance, which leads to some pretty chaotic reactions. And then you have a secure style, where anger is usually a direct, healthy response to a real boundary being crossed.
This is such an insightful way to put it. For someone with an anxious attachment style, anger isn't about pushing someone away. Believe it or not, it's the exact opposite. It's something called protest behavior.
It's this unconscious, almost panicked attempt to get a reaction, to get any response, to reassure themselves that the connection is still there, even if the anger itself is threatening the very connection they're so afraid of losing.
And then on the complete flip side, you have the avoidant style. For them, it's a totally different story. Anger is actually a tool for creating distance. It gets triggered when someone gets too close or starts making emotional demands. The anger works to shut down their own attachment system, push the other person away, and get back their sense of independence.
Okay, so we've examined the clues. We have the iceberg, the childhood wiring, the attachment blueprint. So what now? How do you actually apply all of this to your own life and start to figure out your own patterns? Well, this is where the real detective work begins.
So here are the first 3 steps in your detective's toolkit. It really just starts with paying attention, like what specific situations, what people, what tones of voice consistently set you off. This kind of structured self-monitoring leads you right to the most powerful tool in your kit, which is the anger log.
Now, keeping an anger log isn't about judging yourself, not at all. It's about collecting data, just like a detective. So when you feel that anger rising, you just take a moment to note these key details. What was the trigger? What were the automatic thoughts that popped into your head? What did you feel in your body? And how did you react? Over time, I promise, the patterns become impossible to ignore. You start to see the machinery behind the emotion.
And now, this is where we bring it all home. With the data you've started to collect from your own detective work, you can begin the final and most important step, mapping your personal anger history. This is how you really start the root work.
This reflective exercise is where the real insight happens. You take a situation from your anger log and you start asking these deeper questions. You're applying that iceberg concept directly to your own life. What was really going on beneath the anger? Was it fear, shame? And pay really close attention to that third question. Did this situation feel familiar? Because so often our biggest reactions happen when a current event is echoing an old wound.
And this leads us to the final, most important question of all. What if we stop seeing anger as a problem that we have to get rid of, and instead, we start seeing it as a messenger, as a signal from a deeper part of ourselves trying to tell us about an unmet need or an old wound that needs attention? If we do that, everything changes. The real work isn't about silencing your anger, it's about finally learning to understand its language. So what is your anger trying to tell you?